In the forests of Central Africa, two populations of apes once lived as one. They foraged in the same forests. They faced the same predators. They shared the same ancestors. Then the land changed. A vast river cut the forest in two, and on either side, evolution began asking slightly different questions. Or, more importantly, finding slightly different answers. What emerged were apes that look almost identical, yet organize their societies in profoundly different ways. This is the story of the bonobo, why they are so different from chimpanzees, and how small ecological shifts can reshape behavior, cooperation, and power. If you'd like to learn more, check out the document in the description with research papers and image credits. Bonobos belong to the genus Pan, a lineage that includes only 2 living species. The name bonobo likely comes from a mishearing or misspelling of Bolobo, a town on the Congo River near where the first specimens were collected. From a human perspective, this group is important as our closest living relatives. While most people know this about chimpanzees, bonobos tend to be forgotten, yet they are just as closely related. In fact, bonobos were once considered a subspecies of chimpanzees, known as Pan troglodytes paniscus, until genetic and behavioral evidence confirmed they are distinct species. The bonobo Pan paniscus is found exclusively south of the Congo River, while the common chimpanzee, Pan troglodytes, occupies a much broader range across equatorial Africa. Genetic evidence suggests these two species diverged from a shared ancestor relatively recently, likely within the last 1 to 2 million years. In evolutionary terms, that is a remarkably short span of time. What makes this split so informative is its simplicity. The Congo River is one of the largest river systems in the world, wide, fast-flowing, and difficult to cross. It has long acted as a natural barrier to movement for forest-dwelling animals. Once populations of Pan became isolated on either side, gene flow slowed and eventually stopped. From that point on, evolution was free to proceed independently. Importantly, this was not a dramatic adaptive radiation, nor a response to radically different environments. The forest on either side of the river was broadly similar. Climate and predators remained much the same. And yet, over time, subtle differences began to accumulate, not so much in anatomy, but in behavior. This is why bonobos are so valuable scientifically. They allow us to explore how much social structure and behavior can diverge, even when morphology and ecology remain largely the same. Despite their close relationship to chimpanzees, bonobos are far less familiar to most people. They are sometimes called pygmy chimpanzees, a holdover from when they were a subspecies of chimp, but it downplays their distinctiveness. Their range is small and remote, and they have received far less media coverage than their northern cousins. This relative obscurity helps explain why many people are only just discovering them now. To understand these differences more fully, we need to look beyond genes and geography, and into how these apes organize their societies. At first glance, bonobos and chimpanzees look almost identical. Both are medium-sized apes with dark faces and expressive eyes. Despite the pygmy chimpanzee moniker, chimps and bonobos are basically the same size. Yet a closer look reveals subtle differences in body shape and proportions. Bonobos are more gracile. They have longer legs, narrower shoulders, smaller heads, and a more slender frame overall. Perhaps the most noticeable difference is their pink lips. In chimpanzees, lips darken with age, but in bonobos, adults retain this juvenile coloration. These physical traits also reflect differences in lifestyle, particularly diet. Bonobos are primarily frugivorous. Fruit forms the bulk of their meals, supplemented by leaves, stems, and occasionally small animals. Hunting is rare, and they rarely target monkeys or other vertebrates. By contrast, chimpanzees are more omnivorous, frequently hunting small animals and engaging in extractive foraging, like termite fishing or nut cracking. This difference in diet has consequences beyond nutrition. The relatively abundant and evenly distributed food in bonobo habitats is thought to support more tolerant social interactions, reducing competition and the need for strict dominance hierarchies. Bonobos live in societies unlike almost any other ape. Their social structure could almost be compared to human politics. Leaders form coalitions, mediate conflicts, and maintain social harmony. But the biggest difference, the one that sets them apart, is their gendered balance of power. Bonobos are often described as matriarchal, dominated by females. Yet even this is a simplification. A more accurate picture is a flexible, gender-balanced power structure, one that can shift depending on the group and context. In one-on-one interactions, males are often more dominant than females. But across the larger group, females tend to dominate males, or share power equally. A troop of bonobos is usually led by a coalition of high-ranking males and females, often anchored by an older, experienced matriarch. Female bonobos typically earn their rank through experience, age, and the ability to forge alliances, rather than intimidation or aggression. High-ranking females also act as guardians, protecting younger or low-ranking females from unwanted male attention. So, while bonobos are often called matriarchal, and a group is often led by a female, the reality is far more complex. Males can also rise to a high rank, forming coalitions with both males and females, sometimes outranking many of the females in the group. Power in bonobo society is dynamic, negotiated, and socially mediated, a rare glimpse of egalitarian flexibility in the primate world. Where bonobos are relatively egalitarian and female influenced, chimpanzee society is male dominated and highly competitive. Male chimpanzees are the primary power holders, maintaining rank through alliances, displays of strength, and sometimes aggression. High-ranking males control resources, mating opportunities, and group movement, often forming coalitions with other males to secure or challenge dominance. Unlike bonobos, female chimpanzees rarely form coalitions strong enough to influence group decisions. While females can achieve individual rank within a small subset of social contexts, they are generally subordinate to males in the broader troop hierarchy. This male-centered power structure encourages competition, sometimes escalating to lethal violence or exile, particularly during territorial disputes or intergroup encounters. Chimpanzee society rewards individual dominance and strategic alliances, whereas bonobo society emphasizes cooperation and coalition building, often led by females. The contrast is striking. Two species separated by the same river, sharing a recent common ancestor, yet navigating social life in profoundly different ways. In bonobo society, sex is more than reproduction. It's a social tool. Individuals use sexual interactions to reduce tension, form alliances, reconcile after conflicts, and even greet one another. These interactions occur between all combinations of sexes and ages, and are especially common between females. Female-to-female bonds are central to social cohesion, helping maintain stability and influence across the group. Males also participate in sexual interactions, and not just for reproduction, but as a way to build relationships with females, reduce tension with other males, and reinforce social bonds. Sexual behavior is woven into the very fabric of bonobo politics, acting as a lubricant for cooperation and group harmony. Chimpanzees, by contrast, place far less social weight on sex. Sexual behaviors beyond reproduction does happen, particularly in moments of heightened tension, but these events are relatively rare and short-lived. Alliances are primarily built through grooming, shared aggression, and long-term male-to-male cooperation. Where bonobos rely on bonding behaviors, including sex, to smooth over conflict, chimpanzees manage social life through hierarchy, competition, and force. Perhaps the most striking consequence of these different social systems is how bonobos and chimpanzees handle aggression. In bonobo societies, serious violence is rare. Conflicts do happen, but they are usually brief and are often diffused before they escalate. Tension is more likely to be resolved through grooming, play, sex, or other relationship-building behaviors, rather than through physical confrontation. Lethal aggression within bonobo groups has almost never been observed. Even encounters between neighboring groups can be surprisingly peaceful. Instead of escalating into violence, intergroup meetings may involve social interactions including grooming or play, blurring the boundaries between us and them. Chimpanzees present a very different picture. Aggression is central to maintain hierarchies and defending territory. Male chimpanzees regularly conduct border patrols, and encounters with neighboring groups can turn lethal. Infanticide, coalitionary attacks, and violent territorial expansion have all been well documented. One of the clearest examples comes from Gombe National Park in Tanzania. where a chimpanzee community was observed splitting into rival factions. Over several years, these groups engaged in coordinated attacks that ultimately led to the elimination of one side. This event, sometimes called the Gombe War, revealed just how far chimpanzee territorial aggression can escalate and how deeply it is rooted in male alliances and competition. If you're interested in learning more about the chimpanzee side of this story, I've previously made a video focused on them and Jane Goodall's research, which will be linked on screen and in the description. These patterns are not simply a matter of temperament, they emerge from deeper social rules. In chimpanzees, male-dominated hierarchies, competition over mates, and uneven access to resources create incentives for violence. In bonobos, stronger female coalitions, reduced competition, and social bonding mechanisms limit the conditions under which aggression pays off. The result is a remarkable natural comparison. Two closely related apes living in similar environments, yet one resolves conflict primarily through force, while the other relies on social negotiation and cohesion. Given how closely related bonobos and chimpanzees are, it's no surprise that their cognitive abilities are broadly comparable. Both are intelligent, flexible problem solvers, capable of learning, planning, and navigating complex social relationships. Where they differ is not in intelligence itself, but in how that intelligence is expressed. Chimpanzees are among the most accomplished tool users in the animal kingdom. In the wild, they regularly use sticks to fish for termites, stones to crack nuts, and leaves as sponges to collect water. These behaviors vary between populations, forming local traditions that are often described as chimpanzee cultures. Tool use in chimpanzees is closely tied to foraging, competition, and the extraction of difficult-to-access resources. Bonobos, by contrast, show far less tool use in the wild. This is not because they lack the ability. In captive settings, bonobos readily use tools and can solve complex problems. But in their natural environment, reliance on abundant fruit-rich resources reduces the pressure to develop elaborate extractive techniques. As a result, tool use plays a much smaller role in their daily lives. Experimental studies help clarify this difference. When tested on problem-solving tasks, bonobos tend to excel in areas related to social understanding, such as interpreting intentions, cooperation, and the relationships between others. Chimpanzees, meanwhile, perform better on tasks that require manipulating objects, understanding physical cause and effect, and using tools to achieve a goal. In other words, bonobos are often stronger at social cognition, while chimpanzees specialize in physical cognition. Even within bonobo societies, cognition is shaped by social structure. Female bonobos display a wider range of tool-related behaviors than males, a pattern also seen in chimpanzees, but rarely in other great apes. This reflects the central role females play in bonobo society and how experience and social position influence learning opportunities. Other cognitive differences echo this broader pattern. Bonobos tend to be more risk-averse than chimpanzees, preferring immediate rewards over delayed ones. They also show weaker spatial memory, with adult bonobos performing at levels comparable to juvenile chimpanzees. These traits make sense in a social and ecological context where cooperation, tolerance, and stable food sources reduce the need for long-term planning and risky exploration. Taken together, these findings reinforce a central theme. Differences in behavior between bonobos and chimpanzees are not driven by intelligence alone, but by the social worlds they inhabit. Bonobos and chimpanzees both possess rich vocal repertoires, but bonobo communication shows a particularly striking feature. In the wild, bonobos have been observed using the same vocal call in different contexts, with different meanings, and other bonobos respond appropriately based on the situation. In other words, the call itself is not enough. Listeners must interpret context to understand what is being communicated. This kind of context-dependent communication was once thought to be uniquely human. Even today, it is only known in bonobos and humans. It requires not just vocal flexibility, but social awareness and understanding of what others are doing, where they are, and what they are likely to need or expect. Bonobo vocalizations are frequently used when forming relationships, coordinating movement, maintaining group cohesion, and smoothing over social interactions. Rather than signaling dominance or aggression, many calls function to manage relationships and reinforce social bonds. Chimpanzees, by contrast, also use complex vocalizations, but their calls are more tightly linked to specific situations, such as alarm, aggression, or mating competition. While highly vocal, chimpanzees place less emphasis on flexible, context-driven meaning. Once again, the pattern holds. Bonobo communication is shaped by a social world where tolerance, cooperation, and negotiation matter, and where understanding context can be as important as the call itself. Taken together, the differences between bonobos and chimpanzees tell a remarkably coherent story. These are not random quirks layered on top of one another, but interconnected outcomes shaped by ecology, history, and social feedback loops. When populations of Pan were separated by the Congo River, they entered environments that were broadly similar, but not identical in the details that matter most. South of the river, food resources appear to have been more stable and predictable. Competition was lower. Under those conditions, cooperation paid off, female alliances strengthened, aggression became costly rather than useful, and social bonding, including sexual behavior, became a powerful tool for maintaining group cohesion. North of the river, a different balance emerged. Greater competition over resources and territory favored strong male alliances, extractive foraging, and aggressive defense of space. Tool use flourished, hierarchies hardened, and violence became an effective, if costly, strategy. What makes this comparison so valuable is its simplicity. Bonobos and chimpanzees share nearly all of their evolutionary history. Their bodies remain similar, their intelligence is comparable, and yet, small differences in ecology were enough to push social systems, cognition, communication, and aggression in very different directions. Bonobos remind us that primate societies, including our own, are not locked into a single evolutionary path. Cooperation, tolerance, and social negotiation are not exceptions to the rule of evolution. They are viable strategies, shaped by context and circumstance. In the end, the story of the bonobo is not just about a peaceful ape living south of the Congo. It is a demonstration of how flexible behavior can be and how profoundly social worlds can shape who we become. Today, bonobos face serious threats. Their forests are shrinking due to logging, agriculture, and human settlement, and hunting continues to take a heavy toll. As a result, bonobos are classified as endangered, and every group lost is a loss of a unique social world. Protecting bonobos isn't just about saving a species, it's about preserving an extraordinary window into the diversity of life and the rare social strategies that evolution can produce. Understanding them reminds us what's at stake and why conservation matters. In the forests of Central Africa, the Congo River still flows as it has for millions of years, wide, fast, and indifferent. On either side live apes that are nearly identical in body and mind, yet profoundly different in how they organize their lives. Bonobos show us that aggression is not inevitable, that power does not always flow through force, and that cooperation can be a stable, successful way to live. Not because they are gentler by nature, but because evolution shaped them to thrive in a world where social bonds mattered more than domination. Their story is a reminder that small ecological shifts can have far-reaching consequences, not just for anatomy or diet, but for behavior, relationships, and the structure of society itself. And in that sense, the bonobo is more than a curiosity living south of the Congo. It is a living experiment in what happens when evolution finds a different answer. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the bonobos. If this video sparked your curiosity, don't let it stop here. Share it, talk about it, and keep learning. There's still so much to discover about the world's rare and remarkable species. And the more we understand, the better our chances of protecting them. Thanks for watching.